So let's get started. Hello, everyone. This is Mo from Global Skills Hub. Thank you again for joining us on our shows. Today we have a great guest, Ben. Ben is a third-year computer science student at the University of Maryland, College Park. He's the founder of Back To Back SWE, where he runs a YouTube channel with over 60,000 subscribers. He teaches students computer science fundamentals and software engineering interview questions. Ben, happy to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a while. I know you're
Yeah.
but I also saw a recent video you posted about future plans in 2020. Exciting stuff ahead for you. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, man. All right. So I think a good place to get started is just for everyone to maybe get an idea of your story. Where did this start for you? What was the problem you were facing? When did you notice that this was a problem for maybe a bigger group of people? And also, who do you think should be actually listening to this episode?
Yeah, so it goes back to my first year. I got a invite to interview at Microsoft, and I did their phone screen, and this was for an internship first year. And as a first year student, you don't really know much. Well, I didn't know this at the time, but yeah, it was an entry-level program. Did the phone screen. I went on site. It was amazing. It was the first time I had ever, gone on site. You know how companies will pay for your food and all that and make you feel great. And it was really cool. So everything was going amazing. I had dinner. I had the interview the next day. I went to sleep. Everything was going to plan. And then the next day, it was 3 technical interviews, and the first one was okay. But then the next 2 were absolutely terrible. I didn't know what dynamic programming was then, but I got a dynamic programming matrix question, and I absolutely had no idea. I asked the interviewer, is this a graph question? And then the interviewer just looked at me, and he knew I was failing. So it went horrible. I didn't even know what to say. I froze up, and I literally wasted their time. It was horrible. So after that, I came home, and I had done no prep, and I realized that you need to prep, and there's a bigger system behind just knowing the facts behind how to do, certain topics and, giving a good interview. So I went another year. I never took it seriously. Then the second year I got invited. I went straight to on-sites, and I failed again. And then after this, I realized that I really needed to do something. And when I went online, I felt that there wasn't a rich enough variety of people explaining these topics in a very intuitive way, and I just felt like there was no one. Well, there are certain excellent brands, like HackerRank is excellent. Like they have that small series with I believe her name's Gail McDowell. Amazing, fantastic content. But I never felt like something went into the depth of the way that I thought, and it incited me to think about what should I do. This was December 2018, and then my friend just told me, you seem to have done a lot of YouTube or done a lot of videos as a kid. I started a ton of websites as a kid, and so I just picked up a camera. I didn't know what I was doing, and the rest is kind of history. And I just did a lot of videos. I learned a lot, and one of the I don't know if I'm rambling too long. Is it okay if I keep going on this thread or?
No, yeah, it's great. It's great. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. One thing I realized is the most competent people often never realize the plight of people because it's kind of a blindness of sorts. Like if you really understand something, it's hard to fathom someone really struggling. And so where I kind of noticed is I sit on this middle ground. I see this gap, and I decided that there needed to be a bridge built. So for me, it seems like the natural decision to start teaching. And I saw something that I wished was on the internet, and I decided to go after it.
Amazing. And what was maybe the first video that really caught on, or a moment that you realized, oh my God, a lot of other people are sharing this pain, and this isn't just me? What was there a specific moment where you felt that?
There's never any key moment. It was just gradual. Every video was just adding to this larger library, and then over time, people start gathering around this, and it was kind of weird. I started getting a more rapid pace of comments. I just kept doing this, and It kind of just happened. I don't think there was any distinctive moment.
Amazing. And do you have like a typical type of fans or people that really enjoy your videos? Like, can you identify what kind of people they are?
hmm Yeah. So one of the most fascinating things is there's a really wide variety of people
Hmm.
watching. People from all walks of life that I would have never predicted. Initially, I
Hmm.
was just teaching people, maybe in college, going for an internship. But there's a lot of people like there's people who are in their 50s that are now trying to go into software engineering, maybe transitioning from some other specialization in technology, and they're literally in their 50s. And one guy from I think it was South Africa was saying, "Oh wow, I just got into Amazon. I'm maybe 30 years older than you, but you really helped me." There's people that are again graduating and they're bridging that gap between college and then going to full time. There's people who are maybe 5 years in their career. And again, people who are earlier in their career, not as late, transitioning as well. So there's a wide, rich variety of backgrounds, and it's really fascinating to see all of this.
Amazing, amazing. I'm sure there's a lot of people in our community that would find your videos and generally, concepts that you're covering quite interesting. And it's a challenge for everyone. It's not a problem that is easy to solve, whether it comes to actually understanding how to go into a technical interview, preparing for that, how to
Mhm,
practice for different problems, and just generally how to conduct yourself in an interview. There's lots of topics and lots of things to cover. But my question here would be, and kind of moving on to our next
mhm,
interesting point, is how did you become good at solving problems yourself? Did you use any
mhm,
specific books, tools?
mhm.
Did you have a routine, or maybe you had a mentor, someone who's guiding you through this process?
So just as a baseline, I'm in my third year of college, and I would have to have a preface to this that you know the most frustrating thing about interviews is that or like the high level maybe big end interviews is they're really testing the data structure algorithm interviews test against often information that is really embedded into a college education or a really heavy technical education. There's certain things that I've seen in interviews that maybe I didn't see dynamic programming until this year, my third year of college, and that's or my last semester of my third year, and it's a really embedded that concept is very embedded. So that's just as a preface. I have a college education. I also did leak code. I think I did 240. After my second Microsoft rejection, I absolutely went crazy, and I just did a lot of those. And the key issue about leak code is
Wow.
there's a lot of people that might do a lot of that, but at the same time, it's really important that you really understand why your problem is right. Some people do a lot of leak code and look at a lot of the solutions and don't really deeply understand the concepts because there's
Hmm.
infinite interview problems. And the problem with trying to pattern match or memorize problems is that it's going to trip you up later when a problem doesn't pattern match. So then, yeah, preface college, a good amount of leak code, and then another great book called Elements of Programming Interviews. I read chapter, I think 3 through 16 of that, probably like 5 times. Well, not 5 times, one time fully, word for word. And then the next 4 times were skims because I already knew the content. Um, so I think those were my three pillars. And then a lot of YouTube stuff, a lot of random things on the internet. I think everyone that programs generally learns things just, here and there on the internet, Stack Overflow, YouTube videos. So it's just a wide variety.
Absolutely.
And sorry, um, and teaching as well is really a great way to learn as well. It really solidifies concepts in your mind. I think there's this quote where it's something about it's the three tiers of learning are observing, watching, and then doing, or something
Yep.
like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think those are the 5 things that I've done, and the certain resources I stated, such as elements of programming interviews, cracking the coding interview,
Hmm.
um, and programming online. I think those all help.
Amazing. And did you have like aside from your from your computer science education and practicing on leak code, was there anything else that was kind of helping you guide yourself through the learning experience?
Mhm. Just done all the problems that I could do, all the wide array of topics I could do. And I think a lot of people are really strong in certain concepts, but then they might be weak in others.
Right.
For me, those are linked lists, those are trees. Nonlinear data structures are some of the most difficult topics for people just getting into, practicing for interviews, or maybe just in general when you get into programming. It's a lot easier to reason about the logic of a linear structure in a non-recursive algorithms versus nonlinear structures and recursive algorithms. So the place that bothers people the most is recursive algorithms, linked structures like trees, dynamic programming, and which is a whole nother thing because that's a very academic topic. But yes, I don't think there's been any single topic I focused on, any plan I followed. And a lot of that's a very frequent question I get on the channel comments. People ask for what is a linear path I can follow. And I think everyone should definitely do a pass through of whatever platform you're using. Do a pass through of all the content, but then really identify what you're weak on. For me, again, those were linked list trees, nonlinear structures, dynamic programming, and that's probably the same case for many. And that's something to practice. And that should be matched in tandem with knowing who you're interviewing for. Because if you're just interviewing for a company, maybe for web dev, they might not ask something like dynamic programming. If you're interviewing for Google, who are notorious for asking that, then that's something you want to consider in your studying repertoire. So it really depends on where you're interviewing. But yeah, for me personally, no path. But in general, I would say work on weaknesses.
Okay, I think we got some advice from you. We tried to extract it from you, and I think we got a little bit, so that was good. But speaking of like practicing for questions, what kind of questions are most common? Can you categorize them, or can you make it easier for candidates to identify the problem type and maybe the approach? Maybe you have some kind of matrix for yourself that you're like, this is what you should be looking out for. Can you help us make some sense out of those most common questions?
So there is an overarching set of categories for questions, and those generally fall into common data structures like arrays, algorithmic time complexity analysis, definitely something to be strong in, primitive strings, dynamic programming, recursion backtracking, graphs, greedy algorithms. We have like a long list on our site, and in generally any solution, such as cracking the coding interview, elements programming interviews, or any platform you use, you'll find a linear array or assortment of topics, and generally they're exhaustive. So things like stacks, queues, heaps, and then there's other topics like concurrency, which are more company specific, and then there's topics like system design, which can also be asked. But in the general data structure and algorithms, there are core categories, core concepts. And the interesting thing about interviews is they're very linear in how there's really not too much you can get asked. It's pretty reasonable what you're going to get asked. You can know the topics. It's just the topics go very deep.
That makes a lot of sense. And taking that, where should one start then? So where do we start when we're trying to prepare? There's all these categories. There's all these different types of tools and different approaches that you can take to learn. But where would you recommend a candidate to start?
I think this would have to segment into what one would self-assess themselves in terms of skill. If you're very skilled, or if you're probably have experience programming, you have experience with data structures, algorithms, you have a college education, I'd probably jump right into resources of the caliber, such as elements of programming interviews. I think that our resources are more catered to that middle level as well. But if you are a complete beginner to interviews, a much better resource is cracking the coding interview. That steps you really well into data structures and teaches it from the ground up. You can definitely start with the easier questions. Like if you're on LeetCode, they label it easy. If you're on our platform, we label the questions that are easier as easy. So you can start with the easy questions. And again, linear structures are often the easiest to handle. So you can start with array questions. So I think that covers where you can start resource-wise and category-wise.
Okay. One of the other kind of more important topics that I wanted to discuss with you was, where people fail a lot, or what do you think most candidates are missing out on? Is there like common mistakes, common issues, things that people are just overlooking, and maybe discussing a little bit about how they can go about fixing that. But first, what patterns do you see here, and what have you noticed?
I think one thing is a lot of people just focus on the technical aspect. And one thing that I really wanted to, with what we're creating with our whole new website rewrite and platform, and working with another teacher who's really talented, is we really want to go beyond just the technical and also teach the non-technical. So things like the resume, things like presenting yourself correctly in the interview, answering non-technical questions correctly, because a lot of the thing is, people who are software engineers are extremely logical, extremely smart, and when you fail an interview and you answered all the questions correctly, it really doesn't add up. It just doesn't make sense. But the thing is that interviewing is a very people-oriented process, and interviewers look at a lot more things than just the technical. And this depends. Some companies may just not care at all. They might just say, it might just be criteria where if you can answer everything technical, you're fine. And then some others might be screening for, did you think the right way? Or are you approaching this the way that we would want someone working here to approach it? So it really depends in that fashion. Looking beyond just the technical, what else? I would say that also, I wouldn't say under-preparing. It's just very difficult to get a in-depth, exhaustive cover of all of the topics. So I don't think it's a failure to under-prepare, because it's almost impossible to know everything. I really think that one of the things that I've seen in upper-level college classes, learning from, like super, super smart professors and doing all of these, problem sets that are difficult, is the problems never end. You can never learn everything, and it's hard to do that. So I don't think it's a failure to not completely cover a topic. I think that's what I'd say.
Okay. I'd love to cover some questions from our community. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. So we've got a bunch of questions. At the beginning of our session, you did talk a little bit about your challenge with dynamic programming. So how would you advise someone who's trying to wrap their head around it and starting to practice for questions in that area?
Mm-hmm. So I think my first thought about that is, often people never really get asked dynamic programming questions. Well, not often. It does happen, and it's very unfortunate, because some interviewees are unlucky enough to have an interviewer that may choose that question, or maybe a company to ask that question frequently. So not all companies ask those questions, and the reason I want to kind of preface with that is it takes a very large amount of problem solving to become adept at that specific topic, dynamic programming. It is the most challenging topic. It is something that many college students struggle with. It's something that even the hardest problems for me, I cannot solve. And this is something I frequently say, is it's a very academic topic. It's something that's very oriented for an academic context, because it is a very powerful and rich algorithm design technique. But it's just very nuanced, and it's hard to see whether a problem can be solved with it. But I don't know if I should go too technical here, but one pattern you'll see in dynamic programming problems is subproblems, and specifically overlapping subproblems. And often you can reason about a dynamic programming, something you can solve with dynamic programming, recursively. So you first think about it recursively, and you can think inductively. To solve this current problem, how do I build it up from different solutions? And then you question, what do I know for sure? Those form your base cases. If I know that when I have 1, the output's 0, then I know that for sure. So then you combine these two things. You combine your inductive reasoning, which is the recursive top-down thinking, and then you combine that with what you truly know. And then when those two meet, that's what creates a dynamic programming algorithm. I don't know if that made too much sense over like audio, but that would make sense if I, like in front of the whiteboard, I make sense of it. But so it's extremely academic. It's hard to prepare for, but the only way to prepare for it is to see a lot of problems, do a lot of them, see the patterns, build recursive reasoning, in your mind. I really think it's a muscle, being able to think recursively. I've never, in practice, I'm not sure how much you'll use recursion. I've like when I'm implementing, when I was implementing comment threads, like I think recursively for that. That's implemented recursively. That's the only time I've concretely ever programmed with recursion. Well, not the only time, but so yeah, it really takes a certain way of thinking. And if you're very good at that recursive thinking, you can realize, when am I duplicating work? Then you start caching things, and then that characterizes dynamic programming. So yeah, it's something where you need to see a lot of problems. There's a good textbook called Algorithm Design by Ava Tardos and John Kleinberg. That's an extremely academic book. It's full of proofs, but they have a dynamic programming section. I think that gives a really good fundamental basis, but it's a little thick to read through. But yeah, I'd say just do a lot of problems. It's not the fortunate answer, because, you know, people are very time limited. People are very busy. They have, you know, busy lives. So it's, I don't know, it's hard. I don't think there's a definite answer. It's hard.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I guess it goes back to the questions that we had before, and just there's tons of things that you can prepare for, but you got to kind of see what your time lets you do and what you can actually accomplish in the time you have. But I'm sure you have an interesting video on dynamic programming. Can we include a link here for our team? Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
I think I don't think it's public on the YouTube channel. I think in our platform that we're building, we have a dynamic programming fundamentals, a couple videos. But I think I do have a good amount of dynamic programming videos on YouTube. They're just really old, and I'm not proud to promote them because they have really bad mic quality, but I think they're good. I think I did a video on Kadane's algorithm, which is the linear time solution to the max contiguous subarray sum problem. So that's a good dynamic programming problem. Other ones are the recursive staircase problem. That's a good way of seeing the recursive tree in your mind and seeing where subproblems overlap in caching solutions to, prune out subtrees of solving. That's another good public video. So yeah, the older videos, yeah, they do get lower in production quality, but I think there's a good amount I've done there, and yeah. So.
Yeah, and actually, you're answering another question, which is what resources candidates should be looking at. You've already mentioned quite a few. We'll try to capture them, add them to comments on the show, so that people can start using those. But is there any other resources that you haven't mentioned that you think would be interesting?
I think there's a large plethora of books that I've probably never read that might be exceptional. So I think I only can attest to what I've read and consumed. But yeah, I think I've been exhaustive in what's in my mind.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just going through the questions. So someone has asked about, so there's a question about categorizing. Well, I think we've covered that a little bit. Someone asked about how to remember language details without looking up in docs. I always forget something on interview, even with a lot of experience. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is something that I face a lot as well. Most of the time I'm writing code in either TypeScript or JavaScript, but I interview in Java. So there's a disconnect there between the APIs and remembering them. And I think just the critical thing is before you start interviewing, really start diving back into your interview programming language, or whether that's the same as the one you use in practice for your own projects or company work. So it's really key that you just brush up on it. And I don't think, even for coding assessments, they let you look up the APIs. If you're doing this in person, people are generally okay with you looking up APIs. I don't think I think generally and reasonably, people don't expect you to memorize everything in your language. And of course, the underlying fear here is this a demonstration of incompetence that I don't even know the API to the programming language I'm using? But I think in general, people understand that an engineer is going to use many languages. They're going to know many languages, and they're going, well, not everyone, but I'm just saying sometimes. And I don't think it'll be that bad. I think a reasonable person will be okay with it. And I've seen that in many interviews. When I was doing an on-site for Twitter, I forgot, how to, I think, concatenate arrays or something, and it was fine for me to look it up. So it depends on the interviewer, I think. So just get practice with it, and in general, I think it's fine.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that wraps up most of the questions we had. I do want to keep the session short, but Ben, so tell us what should candidates do to kind of take advantage of what you've done. You've done a lot of work on this. You've been facing this problem for a while. You've been tackling it. You've been approaching it from different angles, and you've already come up with a few approaches on how to solve this. You've had your video series. You started a platform. What would you like to point our candidates to start and maybe use some of your resources?
Okay, so I think in general, again, if you're a beginner, go for cracking the coding interview, get your fundamentals there. Great book, Elements of Programming Interviews. When you're at the intermediate level, go there. And there's a ton of free resources out there. I think my videos are good, and this is like the self-promotion thing, but I really don't like, so this is the thing about like self-promoting. I really think that anyone who wants to sell a product and says, this is going to unlock interviews for you, I think that is complete. I don't think that is possible because everyone comes from different backgrounds. There's many types of interviews, but at the core level, what we're trying to do is make the most exceptional solution that can give someone the best boost. So I think our product is really great. We have a lot of large changes planned. We're planning to release many videos this year. And our website is BacktoBackSWE.com. And yeah, right now we're building our coding editor. We're going to have testing up in about 2 months. So we're going to support all the common interview programming languages. And we just want to carry on what we've done on the YouTube channel and really make something that is exceptional and really brings people results and improves their lives. So that's what we're working on. So yeah, I think plenty of resources, the books I mentioned.
Amazing. Is there any of your videos that's maybe a favorite that you really want people to watch? You think they should watch it? They need to watch it? Any in particular that you can remember?
Yeah, I think I had this video called the Backtracking Blueprint. I think that was a pretty good video on visualizing recursion in your head. I think it was kind of funny that I didn't have a script for that video, and I kind of was rambling a bit, but people really liked it. It got a lot of views. That's a good video. I think my sorting videos are very good because, and this goes back to, I'm really lucky to be able to be going to college, and in algorithm class, you not only learn about how the algorithm works, you analyze it. So I go over the exact math to understanding these algorithms, and understanding the concrete mathematics behind these things allows you to reason a lot better about how these algorithms actually work and perform in all their cases. So my sorting videos, backtracking video, and then yeah, I think there's other videos, but I don't know if I can remember them. But yeah, I think those are good starts.
Amazing. Well, I think that's plenty of resources for anyone who wants to get their hands dirty with practice. I think that's a pretty good start for them. I want to thank you for joining this call. We learned a lot. And if anyone has any questions, can they reach you on Twitter? Is there any way that in particular that you like, if you'd like to be contacted? Maybe they've tried out your platform, or they have some comments on your videos. What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so I see YouTube comments. I reply to every YouTube comment that I possibly see. But I think the best way would be to go to our website, BacktoBackSWE.com, and you can just go hit contact and then just send us an email. That form directly emails us. So yeah, I think that's the best way to reach out.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ben. It was lovely chatting to you, and I wish you the best of luck on your new platform launch. And I'd love to see how things turn out there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We had a great session here with Ben. If you have any questions or comments about the session, please feel free to send them over, and we'll try to get them to Ben, and maybe send some follow-up replies there. But overall, keep in tune, and see you soon.